So welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're undertaking a very specific kind of mission.
Very specific.
We are not tackling a historical event or, a sweeping geopolitical trend. Our task today is almost microscopic. It's clinical and I think you could argue profoundly chaotic.
Yeah.
We are dissecting a single incredibly dense period. It's barely 90 minutes surrounding an evening meal at the infamous Enfield Tennis Academy. We'll just call it ETA for short.
Yeah, that's right. And this scene, it's really an archive unto itself. The sources we have provide an almost terrifyingly detailed chronicle of this one event.
Right.
We're talking 1810 hours, so 6:00 p.m. in the West House Dining Hall. And it's not just what they did. We have atmospheric readings, forensic level descriptions of character actions, and this dizzying stack of crushing, recursive interior thoughts, all of it captured with absolute precision.
So our goal here is to gain knowledge, but quickly and thoroughly, by mapping this complex system. We're essentially trying to identify the core neuroses, the food obsessions, and the institutional absurdities that sustain this entire competitive ecosystem. We're going inside the machine, really, to find out what makes it hum and maybe what makes it break.
And that initial snapshot, the first few details we get, it tells you everything you need to know about the environment.
It sets the stage perfectly.
It really does. This is a huge, airy space, paneled in this warm, knotty pine.
Yeah.
It's probably designed to suggest some kind of rustic health.
Like a lodge or something?
Exactly. But it's occupied by 133 students and 13 staff. So the atmosphere is, it's anything but serene. It's described as an oceanic soundscape.
An oceanic soundscape. I love that.
Yeah, it's a constant low roar of chewing, focused conversation, the high-pitched clinking of utensils, and it's all circulating under these humming overhead ceiling fans. And then you have the smell, that heavy, slightly sour scent of carbohydrates that have been mass-prepared for elite performance.
And within that chaos, the rules of engagement are, well, they're immediately and rigorously clear, aren't they? This is not a relaxed communal meal.
Oh, not at all. You see the rigid social structure, exemplified right away by the single most desired location in the entire room.
The best table.
The best table. It's located nearest the fireplace, which is nice, but more importantly, especially in that humid New England climate, it's nearest the vital AC vent.
The AC vent, of course. Climate control is everything.
But the distinction, it goes beyond just comfort. The lesser tables have these, unstable, standardized cafeteria chairs. The best table, though, it features properly balanced cushioned chairs.
And they're upholstered in the signature ETA colors.
In the red and gray, yes. So the very act of sitting down where you sit, it signals the governing philosophy of the entire institution.
RHIP.
Rank hath its privileges. That hierarchy dictates absolutely everything, from your seating arrangement to your very survival in the academy.
So we're not just watching students eat dinner. We're watching a power structure being physically enforced minute by minute, meal by meal. Okay, so let's unpack this environment by starting with the most visceral component.
The fuel?
The fuel they are putting into the machine. We're moving down to section 1, the granular mechanics of athletic consumption.
It's so crucial to understand this. They're not dining. They are not having a meal. They are refueling.
Yeah.
And they're doing it under extreme duress.
The source material really emphasizes this, doesn't it? This violent eating culture.
It does. I mean, these are high-level, focused athletes, and the clock is always, always running. Many of them are still in their sweat-stiffened clothes because they literally do not have the time to shower after a 3-set match before that crucial anabolic carb window starts to close.
So efficiency reigns supreme. It's just get it in, get it done.
Get it in. And the cultural practice that's grown around this refueling is fascinatingly specific. It really highlights how mechanical the act of eating has become for them. It's not about savoring food. It's about pure optimization.
And what's the dominant technique?
The dominant technique is the maximization of carbohydrate delivery. So what they do is they essentially streamline the caloric intake by creating these sandwiches. They take whatever the entree is, and they just cram it between slices of the standard issue wheat bread.
It's a physical economy.
That's a great way to put it. It's designed to reduce chewing time and just maximize dense consumption. Get the calories in as fast as humanly possible.
But even this efficiency is complicated by the Academy's obsessive micromanagement. We learn about something called the gluten dictate, which is enforced by the coaching staff, Tavis and Stitt. What's the rationale there?
The rationale is, at its core, performance anxiety that's been projected onto chemistry.
Right.
They have this belief that standard glutens promote torpor. That deep, heavy sluggishness that can hit you a few hours after a big meal.
The post-meal slump.
The enemy. Torpor is the enemy of peak physical condition and concentration, so it must be eliminated at all costs.
Which, when you really look at the logistics of it, it reveals the absurd cost of this hyper-specific demand. To avoid this theoretical performance drop, they have to institute an entirely separate and, frankly, ridiculous supply chain just for bread.
It's a glorious illustration of institutional effort versus actual payoff. The specific low-gluten bread has to be bicycled in from the upscale bread and circus in Cambridge.
Bicycled in.
Bicycled. So just think about that. A specific courier, dedicated resources, a whole process, just to deliver slightly different bread to avoid a perceived sluggishness. It perfectly captures the level of micromanagement required to keep this incredibly competitive ecosystem running at what they see as absolute peak efficiency.
Regardless of cost or, common sense.
Exactly. And that detail, that obsession, it extends to every single element on the tray. It just reinforces the controlled, almost engineered nature of the meal.
Absolutely. Take the potatoes, for example. The meal includes baby-boiled potatoes, okay, but those are then mixed with mashed potatoes.
Creating this textural hybrid.
And this is the part that gets me, they're packed into stelliform molds.
Yes. The shape of the mold, it's like a star or an asterisk. It's so specific. And you have to ask, why the mold? Why this shape?
It suggests this highly controlled, standardized portioning. They're making sure the athletes get the precise calorie count, the precise texture necessary for immediate conversion to energy.
Even if that means highly specialized, geometrically specific presentation that just adds all this unnecessary work for the kitchen staff.
So the star shape isn't aesthetic, it's bureaucratic. It's about data integrity.
It's all data. And the beverage choice is just as calculated.
Right, the juice.
Precisely. They prefer cranberry juice, specifically because, and this is a direct quote, it is the most carb-caloric juice available. Every single choice, down to the last drop of liquid, is dictated by quantifiable performance metrics. Not flavor, not satisfaction, not enjoyment.
The food is just data translated into matter.
That's it. And that's why the few deviations from this standard violent frenzy are so revealing. This environment is physically and psychologically taxing, and for some, the required act of eating itself has become a source of profound affliction.
We absolutely have to talk about Trevor Axford. His case is one of the most devastating examples of the Academy's physical toll.
It really is.
Yeah.
He suffers from a specific brain injury, kind of post-concussion syndrome, where all food, everything he puts in his mouth tastes exactly like the smell of vomit.
It's a profound, constant chemical aversion. It's hard to even imagine.
I can't. And yet, he is still there, still eating. That's the key point, isn't it?
It is. This neurological trauma, this complete inversion of a basic human pleasure, it does not grant him an exemption from the training or, more importantly, the fueling schedule.
No. He approaches the task with a neutral, joyless efficiency. He literally eats with his nose pinched to bypass as much of the sensory input as he can.
That single act tells you everything about the priority of the Academy. Performance over comfort, performance over dignity, performance over basic physical pleasure, even over, really, neurological survival. The system demands consumption, regardless of the internal cost.
And then you have the complete inverse reaction, right? The POW-ish gusto of players like Petropolis Khan and Elliot Cornspan.
This is the raw, animalistic side of the competition.
It is. Their aggressive, frenzied consumption. It's this desperate, unthinking drive to consume and survive. It's so intense, so overtly competitive, that other students actually refuse to sit near them.
They're embodying the untamed id of the Academy.
The pure, unadulterated will to consume resources before anyone else can. It's a visible, physical warning to everyone around them. This is survival of the quickest, the most voracious.
And the Academy itself seems to recognize and, in a really twisted way, institutionalize this lack of comfort and care. I find the detail about the sign above the tray bus window to be the ultimate statement on their institutional expectations.
Oh yeah. Your mother does not live here, bus your tray.
It's so blunt.
It is. It's aggressive, grammatically truncated. It immediately strips away any expectation you might have of domesticity or nurturing or personalized care. This is not a family. This is a factory for tennis players. Your only job is efficiency, obedience, and self-sufficiency.
Eat, dispose, train.
That's the loop.
No.
And it establishes the stage perfectly for all the underlying tensions we see erupting in the next section, which is this intense institutional paranoia.
Right, that institutional credo, no comfort, just efficiency, it sets the stage perfectly for Section 2. If the mechanics are all about maximizing intake, Section 2 dives into what happens when that imposed efficiency butts heads with, well, with suspicion. We're talking about the paranoia of the powdered milk conspiracy.
And what's so fascinating here is that the student paranoia, which on the surface seems almost comically obsessive, actually taps into a very real institutional tension that the sources confirm.
So the students are paranoid, yes, but they're not entirely wrong about the deception.
They are not wrong.
Okay, so let's give our listener the expert context first, because the truth of it is a little more complicated than just the rumor. What is the institutional cost-cutting secret when it comes to the milk?
The milk is, in fact, pre-mixed powdered milk. This was a measure introduced by Tavis 4 years prior. Officially, it was a cost-saving measure with the publicly stated goal of having animal fat intake.
So it was framed as a health-conscious decision.
Exactly. But the primary driver was saving money. And the institutional tension arises because they go to these extreme, almost theatrical lengths to cover it up.
And what does that performance of freshness actually involve? What are they doing?
To maintain the placebo effect of freshness and, to avoid an outright student revolt, which would derail the entire meticulous fueling system, the pre-mixed powdered milk is first strained and then it's bagged before it is loaded into the dispenser.
So they are literally fabricating the illusion of a dairy product in a bag. They are performing freshness for the benefit of the athletes.
Performing freshness. I think that phrase is crucial. It is the perfect symbol for the Academy's entire operational philosophy.
Appearances over substance, as long as the cost is lower.
Precisely. And then we meet Jim Troeltsch, who becomes the lightning rod for this whole deceit. He is the one who fixates on this conspiracy, even though he physically sees the bags being loaded into the machine.
His obsession is deep, and it's deeply personal, isn't it? For him, this isn't just a simple complaint about taste. It's rooted in this profound childhood trauma.
It is. His whole fixation on the powdered milk stems from a period when his mother secretly switched to powdered milk at home. This switch immediately preceded, and in his mind, directly caused his sister running away from home.
Wow. So for Troeltsch, milk quality is directly tied to familial stability, to reliability, and to the ultimate threat of betrayal and abandonment.
Yes. That contextual detail, it completely transforms his complaint from, a simple foodie neurosis into a deep-seated fear of deception and catastrophic collapse.
Which is why his evidence reflects this terror. He's swirling his milk under the light, he's scrutinizing it, fixating on bluish residue, suspicious foam, and any hint of undissolved particulate.
He is conducting a full forensic analysis on a glass of skim milk because his entire emotional reality hinges on proving that the institution is, once again, lying to him, just like his family did.
And this is where the dynamic at the table becomes so interesting. The other athletes, while they definitely recognize the institutional failings, they immediately deploy this cynical, pragmatic logic to counter his very emotional fixation.
Right, starting with Michael Pemulus.
Michael Pemulus, who is always the pragmatist, he immediately deploys the medical explanation to just deflate Troeltsch's theory.
Pemulus, he's seeing the situation clinically. He just points out that Troeltsch has a cold, which is evidenced by his visible Seldane bottle on the table.
So the logic is you have a cold.
Therefore, due to your compromised senses, you cannot taste properly. It's a classic scientific dismissal of a subjective, emotionally charged experience. The environment prioritizes data and quantifiable evidence. If your nose is clogged, your complaint is invalid. Simple as that.
And then you get the bureaucratic counterargument from Ted Schacht, which is maybe even more damning to the Academy than Troeltsch's whole conspiracy theory.
Schacht's argument is brilliant in its cynicism. He sidesteps the quality control issue entirely by arguing that Tavis, the supposed mastermind of this cost-cutting conspiracy, is simply too incompetent to manage it successfully.
He brings up a very specific anecdote, right?
Yes, the difficulty Tavis has even regrouting the tiles in the locker room without having to convene an entire administrative committee. The logic is that a conspiracy requires competence and organizational discipline, and the Academy seems to be defined by its profound lack of both.
So the poor quality isn't due to malice, it's due to negligence.
That's Schacht's argument. So the argument at the table boils down to two really unflattering scenarios. Either A, the milk is fine and you're just sick and can't taste it, or B, The milk is terrible, but the guy trying to hide it is too stupid to succeed at the cover-up.
And neither option really instills confidence in the $21,700 investment that these families have made in their future.
Not at all. And this debate, it functions as a critical release valve. It very quickly spirals outward. It stops being about milk, and it starts being about the Academy's overall value proposition and its constant institutional neglect.
When you look at the scale of that tuition, $21,700, it's a massive sum. And it's juxtaposed against these very concrete symptoms of neglect that the students start citing.
Things like the day-old bread with yellow stickers being served in rotation.
The random dinette sets found just discarded in access tunnels.
And my favorite, the acoustic ceiling tiles literally falling onto the athletes during their meals.
So the milk conspiracy, it becomes the perfect metonym for the whole academy. They sell a premium, performance-driven product, this promise of elite tennis success, while delivering daily, measurable neglect and deceit in the most mundane, fundamental areas of life.
It creates a foundational distrust. I mean, if they're lying about something as simple and basic as milk, what deep structural lies are underpinning their athletic success?
And this deep-seated tension is absolutely critical for understanding the character's internal chaos, which is exactly where we're going next. Section 3. Recursive interiority and the double bind.
Right. So if the dining hall is chaotic externally, what's happening inside the heads of these students is exponentially more complex, it's self-referential, and as you noted, it's recursive.
Yeah.
We're going to start with Ortho Stice, the one we call the chronicler of connubial battles. His internal life is just defined by this deep, tragic comic dissonance.
And we have to unpack the origin story of this dissonance because it is one of the most brutal and defining anecdotes in this entire scene. Stice's parents, they met in a Kansas bar, and their courtship was centered around this dark, performative act of self-mutilation.
It was a bizarre, codependent act of will. They pressed lit cigarettes directly into the valley of their bare forearms and just held them there with absolute focus. The game was purely about who would break first, who would jerk away in pain or fear.
And neither did.
Neither did. They ended up with these matching permanent white burn scars, which the source describes almost as a marital brand. That single painful self-inflicted act of mutual endurance is their entire marriage summarized in one moment.
And this foundation, which was forged in the refusal to flinch from pain, it led to a lifetime of extreme, unpredictable cycles of strife and harmony. We're talking 4 or 5 divorces and subsequent remarriages. It's just relentless.
And the cycles of neglect were equally pronounced. During the so-called harmonious periods, the parents would just lock themselves away, completely consumed by each other. This left the Stice and his 6 siblings to fend for themselves.
Surviving on economy-sized potato chips and those telltale sagging diapers, it was neglect born from the emotional presence of this extreme consuming love.
Exactly. And then during the periods of open strife, the dramatic performance just intensified. His mother, who Stice refers to in his retellings as the bride, cooked these elaborate, highly detailed, and often expensive meals.
Yes, and she would cook them specifically to destroy them.
That's the key. She would hurl them dramatically at the kitchen walls when his father returned smelling of what Stice identifies as the trinity of marital infidelity.
Yeah.
Gin, cigarettes, and other women's perfume.
The emotional density of that image is just staggering. The effort of cooking an elaborate meal, not just heating up a can of soup, but putting in true culinary effort, specifically and violently to destroy it as an act of protest and pain.
And Stice's relationship to this deep, deep trauma isn't one of catharsis or healing. He's not processing it. As you said, he's archiving it.
That's where the recursive nature really comes in. His obsession is to meticulously memorize every word, every gesture, every nuance of these parental battles. He doesn't seek sympathy or closure. He seeks to regale teammates with the details.
And we're explicitly told that many of his teammates often just drift out of attention, but Stice persists. He has to tell the story.
It's an addiction to the retelling. He has internalized the chaos of his upbringing, and now he uses the performance of that chaos as his social currency and his personal living archive. It's recursive because the act of retelling keeps the trauma alive and central to his identity, and that prevents him from focusing entirely on the singular focus goal of tennis.
He is a double bind in human form, a physical specimen, this polyclaton body housing, a mind that's been ravaged by this relentless internal narrative. And speaking of relentless internal pressure, that brings us to Howling Condensa.
Oh, yes.
Hal is experiencing his own acute internal chemical war right at this very moment.
Hal is physically, invisibly troubled. He's maintaining this calm exterior, but we see the telltale signs. There's excessive swallowing, and he is meticulously constructing these small, ordered structures from the uneaten food on his plate.
Which is a classic sign of acute displaced anxiety. It's the need for microcontrol in a situation where you feel you have none. And we know why. It's the omnipresent threat of the urine test.
The tension surrounding Hal's showdown with the Academy's administration has just reached a peak. The panic was caused by the highly visible, highly clinical arrival of the ONANTA urologist's lab-equipped van.
And it's important to clarify, ONNTA stands for the Organization of North American Neo-Territorial Administrations. It's a bureaucratic entity that governs interterritorial athletic competition and drug testing. This isn't some small-town doctor showing up. This is the big competitive system watching you.
And the clock is absolutely critical here. We learn the vital private detail that is just consuming his thoughts. Hal is 29 days chemical-free.
29 days. He is agonizingly close to being in the clear. But that very proximity creates the maximum amount of pressure. He is performing his cleanliness not just for the test, but for himself and for the entire academy.
The internal shift he is processing is fundamental, isn't it? He's transitioning from being a secret, heavy marijuana user to becoming the proclaimed whole, new, and chemical-free Hal.
And his attempt to project absolute control extends to the physical act of testing itself. It's not enough to be clean. He has to look clean.
Exactly. He is meticulously planning how he will submit the urine sample with a wide smile and exemplary posture. He isn't just worried about the chemicals in the sample, he is worried about the performance of his clean lifestyle.
Yeah.
He has to project this air of total innocence and total compliance even over the most private biological function.
And this performance is intensified by a very specific layer of guilt related to his recent athletic success.
Right. He knows he should have lost his recent match against Ortho Stess. This realization that his win might have been fraudulent or unearned, it just compounds his internal pressure and guilt. It makes the performance of the whole new Hal essential to maintaining his competitive self-concept.
The victory was tainted, in his mind, by a perceived chemical deficiency, so the clean urine test becomes his necessary redemption.
And that leads us directly to the Stice-Hal tennis dynamic itself, which provides the actual flashpoint for Stice's current psychological state and why he's trying to move food with his mind at the dinner table.
Stess took Hal to 7-5 in the third set. It was a major near win for him. But the way he lost is the key to understanding his crisis of faith. It wasn't just a physical failure, it was a physical impossibility.
Can you describe that moment, the supernatural mishit?
Stice hit a badly mishit cross-court volley. By all laws of physics, wind dynamics, and geometry, the ball should have landed wide. It was a clear, definitive error. But instead, it curved back into the singles corner, flying against the wind direction, and it just settled for a winner.
This was the anomaly that shattered Stice's reality. It introduced a non-physical element into his highly physical sport.
And his immediate reaction wasn't just frustration. It was a psychic revelation.
He sensed the tennis balls themselves becoming sensitive to his inner will. He felt what he calls a coercive reverence from the inanimate objects he was supposed to be mastering.
Yes. He nearly won the third set after that. He was physically in control, but he choked. And the source is clear why. He experienced a genuine crisis of faith. He simply didn't believe he was capable of beating Hal Incandenza, the player who had recently undergone this celebrated competitive explosion.
The double bind here is just devastating. His technical ability was present. He even sensed this potentially supernatural or psychic edge, but his deep-seated psychological belief in his own inferiority, which is likely rooted in the chaos of his upbringing, it caused him to fail.
He couldn't integrate the possibility of victory into his self-concept, so his mind sabotaged his body. He lost because he couldn't believe he deserved to win. And that crisis of faith is what drives the final absurd scene we will examine. But first, we need to address the broader environment that reinforces this feeling of total chaos.
Right, that failure of control, whether it's physical, mental, or potentially spiritual, brings us to Section 4, the sinister, inappropriate objects and social solipsism. The chaos of the dining hall isn't just in their heads anymore. It's being reflected by these increasingly bizarre, inexplicable external events that are violating the Academy's ordered existence.
This ongoing phenomenon is causing what the source calls universal fantods.
Fantods.
Which is clarified as a deep, creeping, persistent unease, something bordering on a psychological breakdown for the whole community. And these incidents, they're escalating in absurdity and their violation of basic logic.
It began months ago with that frightening near-fatal incident involving Mario Incandenza and a Hussey 6 tripod. But the more recent examples are so absurd, that's what makes them truly unsettling. They feel like jokes without a punchline.
Exactly. Take the grounds crew lawnmower. It was mysteriously found in the Dawn kitchen. Not in the shed where it belongs, but in the food preparation area. This event was so unsettling to the staff that Mrs. Clark, the head cook, took 2 nights off.
Which resulted in the serving of eggplant parmesan 2 nights running. The systemic absurdity has real-world caloric consequences.
And then, a ball machine, a highly specific piece of athletic equipment, appears completely out of context in the female sauna.
And let's not forget the spontaneous acoustic ceiling tiles just falling. It's a literal physical breakdown of the structure itself, which perfectly mirrors the mental breakdown of the athletes below.
But the climax of this weirdness, and the most recent incident affecting the dining hall directly, is the squeegee incident. And this one requires granular detail because it is the most inexplicable act of all.
Okay, so the squeegees, standard cleaning equipment, they were found crossed in a saltire formation high up on the dining hall's north wall. What did the investigation reveal?
Shocked and tall Paul Shaw, 2 people who were dedicated to logic and order, they confirmed that they examined the wall meticulously. They found no nails, no holes, and crucially, no visible means of attachment.
So the only way the squeegees could be there is if they were simply placed there by some invisible or non-physical force.
That's the terrifying implication. And the key realization that drives the fantods is that these are not simple pranks. They lack the humor, the motive, and the visible means of execution of a prank.
They possess a tectitic and sinister aspect.
Tectitic, yes, meaning they resemble solid bodies that originated externally, like meteorites or objects that have been hurled from some distant, unknown place. It is the ultimate failure of rational explanation in an institution that is obsessed with logic, physics, and control. The very laws of their world are being quietly violated around them.
And while the students are dealing with these impossible objects, they are simultaneously struggling with the most basic functional human connection, intimacy, and social interaction. This is where the intense social solipsism of the academy becomes painfully clear.
The sources outline a complex and often asexual social landscape. These players are so utterly drained, physically and emotionally, by the demanding regime of high-level tennis that they just lack the emotional juice for dating. Some, like Hal, are actively aiming for a lifetime virginity.
And Hal's motivation is especially recursive. It's so revealing of his family structure. He is defining his sexuality entirely in opposition to his older brother, Oren.
Oren Incandenza is described as having acrobatic coitus, enough for all 3 of the Incandenza siblings. So Hal views his own celibacy as a necessary counterbalance to the chaotic, destructive excess of his family members.
He's making his sexual abstinence yet another performance of control. He's proving that, unlike his brother, he can harness and restrain his appetites entirely.
And then you have the external, often crude analysis that's applied to the female players, which further isolates them. Keith Freer's theory stands out as a prime example of this failed communication.
Freer's theory, which he discusses with this intense misplaced confidence, is that most of the female players are nascent lesbians who simply don't know it yet because they're so focused on their sport.
And he uses these specific, objectifying physical details as his bizarre evidence. He cites USS Millicent Kent's large, powerful artillery breasts and her bulldogs and a bag butt as evidence of a physical masculinity that somehow prevents heterosexuality.
And his analysis of Carol Spodek is equally strange, isn't it?
Spodek's only evidence, in Freer's mind, is her 5-year hyper-loyal attachment to a single Donnie racket, which he sees as a form of non-transferable, non-human attachment.
It just highlights the profound failure of connection. These male athletes can only process the powerful, focused female players through these bizarre, often insulting physical or material proxies. They cannot see them as potential partners. They can only see rivals or data points that need to be classified.
And poor Jim Troeltsch, our milk conspiracy theorist, he avoids sexual tension entirely because it literally makes him feel oxygen deprived.
Yeah.
He has never dated. This environment, obsessed with physical exertion and emotional suppression, it creates these extreme, damaging psychological responses to intimacy, proving how deeply trapped these individuals are in their own heads. Solipsism just rules the dining hall.
This entire system, so rigid yet so clearly collapsing, is forced to confront its true physical costs in Section 5, crisis physicality, and the lingering fixation.
Yes. The noise, the clatter, the individual neuroses, they're all brought to a complete halt. The entire dining hall experiences a brief, rippling lull, a silence so profound it's physically noted, and it happens when Evan Ingersoll appears on crutches.
This is the moment the external physical crisis interrupts all the internal ongoing neuroses.
Ingersoll is escorted by the Prorector, Tony Nwangi. His casque is noted for being sailor hat white, a blinding symbol of the clean, decisive nature of his injury. He has ruptured his patellar tendon, and the prognosis is brutal.
6 months of development lost.
In the ETA economy, where every single month counts in the brutal climb up the competitive ladder, 6 months is a lifetime of lost opportunity. It's the ultimate brutal reminder of the physical toll of this quest for perfection.
And the immediate reaction of his peers is so crucial because it highlights the paralysis that's caused by this absolute self-focus.
Trevor Axford, who is Ingersoll's designated big buddy, should be the one offering support. Instead, he just sits with his eyes shut tight, unable to offer any conciliatory gesture. His paralysis is absolute. He is so utterly consumed by his own affliction, the food tasting like vomit smells, that he cannot extend empathy even to his designated friend who has just suffered a catastrophic, career-altering injury.
His self-focus is total, a defining trait of the academy culture.
Yet, even in this self-absorbed state, we do see these complex, almost damaged attempts at support. Hal and Troeltsch approach Ingersoll, but even this moment of human kindness is filtered through the Academy's specific, grotesque reality.
They have to navigate around Bernard McCulloch's fresh vomit, a silky tan cataract, just to reach Ingersoll.
And then Hal kneels penitently, a gesture of respect and possible penance for his own unearned win. And Troeltsch, the paranoid milk critic, signs the pristine white cast. It's a moment of bizarre, flawed human connection amidst literal bodily failure and the constant presence of institutional filth.
As the scene winds down, the atmospheric and institutional decay details return, reinforcing the environment's oppressive nature.
We're told the sun sets, but they don't see the light disappearing over the Newton Hills. And the reason is that the dining hall windows face east, toward the industrial complex, the Enfield Marine Complex.
So they are literally oriented away from the natural cycle of the day, facing the institutional, manufactured landscape instead.
And the relentless physical demands just continue. Schock performs his ritual, taking 8 amber bottles of medication for his Crohn's disease. It's another reminder that these supposedly elite, physically perfect athletes are constantly managing extreme, chronic, physical vulnerability.
And then the final indictment of the institution is represented by the kitchen workers.
Yes. 2 black kitchen workers descend the steep hillside hand in hand. One of them, Clennett, whom Hal had seen earlier leaving CT's administrative office, is carrying a bulging backpack. And the source material suggests this bulge implies dumpster pilferage.
Which confirms the institutional neglect isn't just targeted at the high tuition students. It extends to the most vulnerable staff. Clennett's presence suggests some internal bureaucratic complexity, but here she is, likely having to scavenge to supplement the wages provided by this multi-million-dollar institution.
The system chews everyone up, regardless of their rank. And as the hall finally empties, the 2 great psychological fixations remain. Troeltsch is still staring, fixated at the bluish residue in his glass of powdered milk.
And Stice is back to his cherry tomato.
This is the definitive tragic-comic climax of the entire scene. Stice returns to that cherry tomato perched halfway up the incline of his salad bowl, and he's attempting to will it to roll down through concentrated psychic effort.
And the physical incongruity of Stice is highlighted one last time to really emphasize the internal turmoil. His crew-cut head resembles an anvil, a solid, heavy object, and his beautiful, perfect polycleton body is incongruously spliced with a ravaged Winston Churchill face.
He is physical perfection, housing profound psychological distress and trauma.
And the process he applies is critical. He is applying the exact same internal coercive process, the coercive reverence he felt during those anomalous ball movements in his match with Hell-2 to try and move this inanimate object.
This represents the ultimate tension of the Academy. He is attempting to prove that the impossible movement of that tennis ball was not a fluke of physics, but a function of his sheer mental will. If he can move the tomato, he can believe he truly almost beat Hal. His entire fragile reality, his capacity for belief in his own competitive future, now hinges on that tiny red sphere.
It's the highest form of athletic obsession warped by trauma and delusion. He has to impose his internal narrative onto the physical world, or the world he inhabits. The academy, the competition, his family's history. It will overwhelm him entirely. What an exhausting, dense, and deeply human scene this single dinner turned out to be. We dissected this one evening meal at ETA, and we've extracted an entire archive of data and psychological turmoil.
We saw the intense data density of the environment, where every meal, every cushioned chair, every specific piece of carb-laden bread is calculated, controlled, or contested. And we mapped the specific psychological double binds. Hal's intense controlled performance aiming for a specific chemical state, and Saxes' self-coercion, trying to substitute psychic will for physical belief.
And we witness the tragicomic failure of communication in a system that is utterly obsessed with physical prowess. The athletes are simultaneously hypervigilant, eating violently, fearing milk conspiracies, and yet they are completely paralyzed when a true, immediate physical crisis, like Ingersoll's devastating injury, occurs right in front of them. Their own trauma makes empathy impossible.
And what this minutely detailed scene, just crowded with brand names, specific physical afflictions, and specific anxieties, what it reveals is a world where internal neurosis and external reality are equally and mutually oppressive. The paranoia about the milk is just as real as the fact that the milk is indeed powdered. The absurdities and the pain, they all carry the same weight.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We documented Stistis's desperate attempt to move a tomato using pure mental will, an attempt that was rooted in the anomalous, almost psychic experience he had during his high-stakes match with Hal and Condenza.
And this raises an important and, I think, provocative question for you to consider long after this deep dive ends. In a world of absolute physical competition and high-stakes performance, a world that demands total focus and visualization, when does disciplined mental concentration cross the line into genuine mental delusion?
And how long can a high-performing person distinguish between the two when both discipline, focus, and delusion feel equally necessary and equally real for achieving ultimate victory? What specific detail stands out to you from this archive of chaos?
Something to think about.
Something to mull over until our next deep dive. Thank you for joining us.
Until next time.